Wernher Magnus Maximilian Freiherr von Braun was born on March 23, 1912, in Wiersitz, a small town that is now part of Poland. From a very young age, he was fascinated by the night sky. While most children were content to gaze at the stars, Werner wanted to reach them. At the age of 12, he read the book, The Rocket into Planetary Space, by Hermann Oberth, one of the fathers of astronautics. That book changed his life. It ignited a passion that would drive him for decades. By the time he entered the Technical University of Berlin in the early 1930s, von Braun was already designing and testing small rocket engines. He quickly stood out as a prodigy of engineering and physics. His professors often described him as the student who could see beyond the present. Soon, his experiments caught the attention of the German military, which was beginning to explore the potential of rocketry. In 1934, von Braun successfully launched two rockets that reached altitudes of over 2,000 meters, an impressive feat for the time. The success drew the interest of the German Army Ordnance Department, and von Braun was hired to lead rocket development under military supervision. His team was transferred to a remote location on the Baltic Sea coast, a facility known as Peenemünde. There, a new era in rocket science began. At Peenemünde, von Braun and his engineers designed and built the V-2 rocket, the first long-range ballistic missile in history. It stood nearly 14 meters tall and could travel hundreds of kilometers, reaching the edge of space before descending toward its target. Though the V-2 was created for war, it represented the dawn of modern spaceflight. The same principles that made it deadly would one day allow humans to explore other worlds. But these achievements came at a cost. Thousands of forced laborers died building the V-2 in underground factories during the war. It was a dark chapter in the history of technology, one that von Braun would later regret deeply. After the war ended, von Braun and his team realized that their knowledge could either be destroyed or preserved for the future of science. They made a choice that would change the course of history. In May 1945, Wernher von Braun surrendered to American forces. Through a secret operation known as Operation Paperclip, he and more than 100 of his engineers were brought to the United States. At first, their mission was simple: help America understand the German rocket designs. But soon, their purpose evolved. Under von Braun's guidance, the U.S. Army began building new rockets, inspired by the V-2, but aimed toward exploration, not destruction. During the late 1940s and early 1950s, von Braun worked at the White Sands Proving Ground in New Mexico, and later at Redstone Arsenal in Alabama. There, he developed the Redstone and Jupiter rockets, the stepping stones of the coming space age. These rockets would later form the backbone of America's first space missions. It was also during this time that von Braun became a public advocate for space exploration. He wrote articles for magazines such as Collier's, showing readers what a journey to the moon or Mars could look like. For the first time, ordinary people began to dream about space. In 1955, von Braun and his team officially became U.S. citizens. Just 2 years later, the Soviet Union shocked the world by launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. The space race had begun. The United States urgently needed to respond, and von Braun was ready. In 1958, his team launched Explorer 1, America's first satellite, marking the nation's entry into space. Soon after, NASA was formed, and von Braun was placed in charge of the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. There, he led the development of a new generation of rockets, the Saturn series. The ultimate goal was bold and clear: send humans to the moon and bring them back safely. Von Braun's masterpiece was the Saturn V rocket. Standing 110 meters tall, it remains the most powerful rocket ever built. It could lift over 3,000 tons and generate more than 7.5 million pounds of thrust. Every bolt, every valve, and every circuit was designed with one mission in mind: to carry astronauts beyond Earth's atmosphere. On July 16, 1969, his dream became reality. The Saturn V launched Apollo 11 from Cape Kennedy, Florida. Millions watched around the world as the rocket roared into the sky. 4 days later, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the surface of the moon. Humanity had reached another world, and von Braun's lifelong vision had come true. After Apollo, von Braun continued to push for new frontiers. He proposed plans for a reusable space shuttle and a permanent space station orbiting Earth. He believed that humanity's destiny was to explore the cosmos, not just to visit it once. The best way to predict the future, he once said, is to create it. For his achievements, von Braun received numerous awards, including NASA's Distinguished Service Medal and the National Medal of Science. But controversy followed him throughout his life. Critics questioned his wartime past, while supporters argued that without his genius, the United States might never have reached the moon. Von Braun himself often said, "I'm a scientist. My goal was always to reach space, not to wage war." In his later years, von Braun suffered from cancer, but continued to work as an advocate for space exploration. He gave lectures, wrote essays, and inspired a new generation of engineers who would carry his dream forward. Wernher von Braun died on June 16, 1977, in Alexandria, Virginia, at the age of 65. He was buried quietly beneath a simple tombstone inscribed with a verse from the Bible, Psalm 19:1. The heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament shows his handiwork. Today, his name is remembered not only in history books, but in the technology that still reaches for the stars. Schools, museums, and monuments across the world honor his contributions. Outside NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, his statue stands as a reminder of a man who dared to dream bigger than the Earth itself. This is the story of Wernher von Braun, the visionary who turned rockets of war into vehicles of exploration, the man who believed that limits exist only until we dare to cross them, and the dreamer whose work lifted not just astronauts, but all of humanity's hope to reach the stars.